Hello everyone, this is Alex, and today we are looking at an orchestral arpeggio. What the hell is this? So you'll see in a second, but this video is more about showing you how orchestration can really transform your music in such an interesting way. And I believe this idea can really make you think different about how you compose for the orchestra. In contemporary classical music, there's this idea that on one side there is musical material, so motifs, melodies, harmony, themes, but also on the other side there's orchestral fabric. So orchestral fabric is like timbre, the different instruments from the orchestra, so the idea of different instruments playing together, responding to each other, the colors of the instrument of the orchestra. But this idea is often separated from, motifs and theory, modes and all that. It's all orchestration, right? But I can tell you that orchestral fabric is in itself such a powerful tool. And you know who is famous for this idea of the orchestral fabric? It's is Maurice Ravel, is Bolero, the worst piece ever. No, I'm kidding. I love this piece only for the orchestral fabric, but I can't hear it anymore. I can't hear it. Stop playing this in concert, please. So Maurice Ravel's Bolero is basically completely boring. It's the same melody repeated over and over. And himself, he said something like this, that it wasn't an interesting piece of music, but what was interesting in that piece was the orchestral fabric. Since it's constantly changing the orchestration, it becomes something really interesting and intriguing, and it's constantly growing. And I'll show you here how I just take a very simple idea, which is an arpeggio, and transform it into something musical and something exciting and colorful. So let's have a look at what I'm talking about in a computer. All right, so here it is. This is the example in question. So for this exercise, I'm starting up from this little harp thing here. It's a simple arpeggio of G minor 7 in sextuplet, going up onto the first beat and then going back down again, going back up onto the next first beat, etc. So musically, it's very normal, but we're going to make it interesting with this whole process of orchestration. Let's have a listen at first. So still not so uninteresting, right? But we need to give it some love to make it cool, and especially in the context of the orchestra, there's so many things we can do with this. So first, we're going to start by focusing on the strings. How can we orchestrate this for strings? So the first and obvious way would simply be to use these arpeggios and to give them to different group of instruments. Let's say this first one to the cello, and then the second one to the viola, and then again the cello here, and then again the viola here. And once it gets up in register, then we can give maybe this to the second violin, and then the first violin here, and then again second violin, first violin, etc. So this is the most obvious way to orchestrate this. I'd say maybe it's the first thing you can do, just so you can try and do these cascades, represent this idea of the harp through the string orchestra. But see that I'm trying to make it a little bit more interesting. First, I give a pizzicato with the double bass. This is actually an octave lower, heard an octave lower. So we actually hear the same note here. So the double bass just gives this a little start, a little jump start. But afterwards, the cello play at the exact line here. And then, like I said, the viola takes the second part here, and again, the first cello here. But notice something here. This is a new note. This note was not here. It's simply a way for the performer to start on the downbeat. It will be hard to do something like this. It's just hard for them to play. So this is my solution. We give them a new note down here, which is, I know it's not here, but we're orchestrating it, and that's part of it. We're just adding this new note to then be able to do the arpeggio here. And you'll see once we hear it, it does still give this kind of cascading effect. And we still hear this high note here. So we feel this renewal just after the downbeat. So I'm doing the same thing here that is repeated. And once I come here, this part that was played by the cello is now played by the violin 2, and this one by the first violin here. I could have maybe started here, but I like this idea of just bringing in the first violin right at the end. This is going to feel like a form of crescendo, just because it's going up. And so the first violin, since they're the larger number of strings in the string orchestra, coming in just at the end like this will conclude very well this sentence instead of starting a little bit earlier. The viola and the cello are a little bit less numbered, so you will really feel this build up around here. Let's just listen to the strings now. Interesting effect, right? This really feel this cascade effect that the harp is playing, basically an arpeggio that is spread across the string orchestra. But what about the other parts of the orchestra? We have woodwinds, we have brasses, we have percussions. For something very subtle like this, I wouldn't go for brasses and percussion right away. I would wait a little bit to know where we're going with this. And if we add some, it'll be right at the end and maybe just a little bit. So let's go to the woodwinds now. The woodwinds, I decided to do something similar than the strings. They're basically doubling the strings. And we start with one bass clarinet, and this is played by 2 clarinets. And this part here is played by 2 flutes, and coming right at the end with the violin 1. So again, this build-up effect only happens right at the end. And see that this bass clarinet part is gonna be performed afterwards by the clarinet here, just because it's getting really high for the bass clarinet. So it's better to give this to the clarinet at this point. I decided not to put any oboe. The oboe is not a good register for this. So let's just sing to only the woodwinds here. And also I didn't say with the strings, but this high note here in the harp, I decided to give also the lower octave here. It just feels right with the little notes that we added down here, here, and here. It's important in these kind of gestures to punctuate at the end, just so that we really hear where this arpeggio is leading, what is the note. So to have also an octave lower just gives it this clarity a little bit more. Now let's listen to this first example. It's already pretty nice, but I think we can make it better. This first way to orchestrate arpeggios through the orchestra is what we could say a basic replica of the original. We just added a few notes, which is already fine. But let's try and work some more on the strings, especially since the strings and the woodwinds are doing the same thing. So at least if one of them can do something different. And the strings are very good in this kind of effect to add some blurriness. So notice that in this harp part, there's a certain blurriness to this effect because the harp is playing a lot of strings and the harp strings are resonating. And the strings here, they don't really do that. They just play these dry, quick notes and the strings after that are muted. How to replicate this kind of, blurry effect through the orchestra? Let's see what I did here in this second example. So if we compare the first one and the second one, the woodwinds are basically the same. I left the harp as well in the original, but the strings are quite different. They're playing tremolo notes between some of the notes from the arpeggio, again to create this blurry effect. So see the different registers that I implemented. I tried to follow this kind of line, adding some of the notes as they are appearing. And all the strings are following also this kind of ascension towards a higher note. But this kind of effect will be a little bit more dense than what we had here. And this is exactly what we are looking for to recreate the blurriness of the harp part. So let's listen to this second example now. And now we're starting to hear a real orchestra. The effect is still there, but it's transforming. And that's what's interesting with thinking about orchestration and thinking creatively with orchestration. Orchestration isn't just taking some music and just putting it down on paper for the different instruments. And this is a crucial part of orchestrating and to make it interesting and creative. But now we're not done yet. There's a third option that I want to give you. And here it is. So this is the second one here, and this is the third one here. We see that the woodwinds are a lot more dynamic here. I wanted to make them more flying around, this kind of effect going up and down. I wanted them to, become more than what the original music was. Keeping these notes from the clarinets and also from the flute here, we do have these notes that are the same. Also these notes at the end that are the same. But I added some other notes around from the arpeggio. You see, this one is even going down. We don't have anything going down in the original. It's just going up. But actually, since it's so low, this kind of inverted arpeggio is a way to bring in the upper part of your woodwinds, in that case the flutes. Otherwise they couldn't play at the beginning because just there was no music there. So sometimes taking an arpeggio like this and to make it bigger than it is originally, and we're not really adding music so much because it's an arpeggio going up, and the flute here is doing an arpeggio going down. It's an arpeggio, and it's the same chord. There's no like new notes or new chords or whatever. We're pushing the idea further to say, well, this is part of the original idea. This is what makes it an orchestral piece now. And we're doing that with all of the different instruments as well. So we have notes going up and down, but still the general motion is that things are going up, right, towards here. Also notice that in this version, I'm adding the oboe and the piccolo. Now they're playing this much more comfortable register for them, but still the piccolo is not so loud in this register. It's not like its highest register, so that's perfect. I wouldn't send it like an octave higher like this because this actually sounds an octave higher. The piccolo, it sounds an octave higher than it's written, so it wouldn't be too high for me. Let's listen to only the woodwinds for this. So now let's listen to this part, which I think is much more interesting. And it pairs really well with these violins. We have this general motion going up, but it's much more blurry and it's much more dynamic and active than the simple arpeggio going up every beat also, because that's something else with this pattern. It's a pattern and it becomes predictable. You play it once, and then you play it twice. Okay, it's the same thing, and then okay, your mind says, well, it's going to be the same thing. But the fact that we're orchestrating this way, when you're going to hear it, you're not going to realize that it's just one simple idea, that is one pattern that is repeated. And now I have even one last version here. So the fourth version here, if we go focus on the woodwinds, I add in the bassoon. So the bassoon is basically going to play what the bass clarinet is playing. So this is two bassoons playing this part here. And at the end here, they're playing two notes here. And these two notes will have something to do with the brasses, which I will talk about in a second. If we see the strings are exactly the same, now the harp, I think this original idea, this original arpeggio thing, I wanted to get rid of it. I'm sorry, but I wanted to get rid of it and to make it like it's part of the music and the general system of the music, but it doesn't have to be there. We feel like there's a construction behind, but we don't need to give it to the listener and to give them how the sausage is made, right? So we can listen to just the harp here, this little thing. It's there are some notes from the arpeggio, and it ends with a glissando. So more interesting to me, and it's just following this general motion going up. And also, I thought this idea, pum 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 bum, 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 ba-da-da-dum. This little rhythm that we add into this adds a little bit of unpredictability in the system. So instead of having this predictable pattern every downbeat, then we have something a little bit more musical. And notice that I even use a trombone. I said one trombone because this is supposed to be something delicate, something subtle. This should be like piano or piano to mid or forte, but nothing more. It's not like a big arpeggio going to a forte, right? So just like one trombone playing these first two notes here, and then leading to the horns. They're playing some of the notes from the chords. And I chose these intervals because they would sound good together. I got a sixth here, and then a third, and then a third again, leading to an octave here at the end. And the trumpet are following more or less this kind of gesture. They're kind of activating this upbeat here, and then ending with this sextuplet figure from the original arpeggio. Let's listen to just these brasses. It's added a little bit of dynamism into it, but nothing crazy, right? The horns are just two players, and then the trumpets as well. I just took two of these players. These instruments can play soft. We often think of the brasses like they're gonna destroy everything with their sound, but no, they can really play soft notes and contribute to these kind of textures. You just have to ask them to play soft, and then also play in a comfortable register. Now regarding this motion here, the bassoons are playing the notes from the trumpet, so they're doubling the trumpets here. And finally, I decided to add in some percussion. This is a triangle, a suspended cymbal, a glockenspiel just for the last three notes, and then a triangle as well to add some brightness to this. This is just 100% brightness and very high brilliance in the sound. Now let's listen to this last example and hear what our music has begun. And just one last time, let's hear the harp part, which is the original. It's crazy, right? How we can take this simple idea and transform it into something exciting, something colorful. I strongly advise you to do similar exercises. It doesn't have to be arpeggios. It can be just this idea of a crescendo. It can be just a very simple chord progression. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it was helpful. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and share a comment down below. I'd be happy to talk with you and to exchange ideas with you. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.